All right, it's the second straight holiday week here on the Bootleg Football Podcast. Of course, Wednesday being the worst possible day to have Christmas and New Year's on the calendar because it disrupts everything. So a little bit of a condensed show today to account for, the craziness of this time of year. We will be talking Vikings, Lions. We will be talking Steelers, Bengals. We'll hit on the Rams. And also a little topic that I did not throw in the rundown, but I felt inspired to talk about today. So EJ, I'm not expecting you to have any strong takes about this, but I need to get something off my chest. And it's college football related. We rarely talk college football on this show. The system is working, folks. Okay. There is only, as of the time of us recording this, which is 3 hours before the Notre Dame Georgia game, there's only one top 4 team left in the playoffs, and it's Georgia. And if they lose today to Notre Dame, the semifinal round is going to be number 5 against number 8 and number 6 against number 7. So the 12-team format is working. It's not just the top 4 seeds that would have made it in past years battling it out with, number 5 through 12 going to some New Year's bowl game with everybody opting out because they're going to the draft or the portal or whatever. Like, this is what we wanted. We wanted more teams that had roughly equivalent talent to get a chance here, and they got a chance. And Ohio State is destroying everybody on the way there. In previous years, number 8, they wouldn't have even been in this thing. They would have just killed Tennessee in a random bowl game. They actually have a shot at the Natty. So the system's working. Stop bitching. I'm thoroughly entertained by this, EJ. Do you have any sort of surface level take?
I do, and we rarely dip our toe in the college football waters because we don't spend a ton of time there in terms of college football as a system, college teams as teams. We really sort of dissect them and pull them apart for players as their potential for the next level. That's really what we focus on. Of course, we watch a ton of college football. It is funny to me when people argue against teams getting a chance to play. Right. Mm-hmm. It's like, my team's better on paper, or my team was rated better in the preseason, or more people said more nice things about my team. Why aren't they there? Because they lost games.
You lost to Vandy.
You lost games regardless of strength of schedule and everything else. So I'm very much in favor of put them on the field and let them play. And sometimes that's not going to work out the way you want. That's the way it works in the NFL too. It's one and done. Like, you earn your way in with wins in the NFL. There's no preseason rankings that support you in the NFL. But you can lose on a bad Sunday and be kicked out. That's the way that it goes. But you had your chance on the field. There's injury luck, and there's everything else that affects a football team. Same as in college. I find all the dynamics behind the scenes way more interesting. Like, let's have a deep and nuanced discussion about quarterbacks going back to college in a way that they haven't previously. Previously, the money wasn't there, and the race was make as much money as you can, don't get injured, and get to the league because that's your portal for big dollars. Now it's like, I don't know. I can make, $500,000, $1 million, a couple million, depending on who I am as a quarterback.
Now it's like $5-6 million.
Right. I can stay here, and I've seen what is happening to all these young passers in the NFL. The NFL is now a condensed league and does not have time to develop young passers in the way that it did. And those two factors working together, we're seeing quarterbacks go back to college in a wave that we haven't seen before. And it's the interplay of those two factors. I can make money where I am. I'm not giving up my chance at really serious dollars, and I can develop and make my shot better. That argument rang hollow before. People were like, he needs another year, but he's like, I need to make money now. That is a much more fascinating dynamic to me than anything we'll talk about with the college football playoffs. And other than that, hey, there's some good football on TV every day for like 9-10 days straight. It's a good time.
There was one thing you said that I also want to touch on, which is the preseason rankings. And I thoroughly believe the preseason rankings, even though they're not official, right? But just the fact that we spend so much time and effort about preseason rankings, like in the NFL, they don't matter. Like, people will do like a one-off power rank, like an August power rankings. Nobody gives a shit. Like, they don't matter. We don't put weight behind them because we all know that by the end of week 1, everything's going to be completely upside down. But people put so much stock into preseason rankings in college football that it bleeds like a month into the season. And, you have teams that are top 10 in July or August that end up not even being bowl eligible, right? But then it causes kind of like a down the line cascade of fuckery because all these other teams then get propped up for beating this previously high ranked program when it's like, oh, they actually weren't that good, right? And of course, there's a certain conference down south that gets a lot of benefit of the doubt when it comes to preseason rankings. And then they all play each other in conference play. It's like, oh, look how many top 25 wins they have. And it's like, well, what if the entire conference is inflated? Like, you want to talk about Sean McDonough's rant in the Indiana-Notre Dame game where he's shitting all over the Big Ten and saying, well, maybe the Big Ten wasn't that good. Like, it should be about the best teams making it here. And, and you're dinging Alabama for losing in their own conference, and clearly the SEC is better. You're dinging South Carolina for losing in their own conference, and clearly the SEC is better. Well, Alabama and South Carolina just lost to 2 Big Ten teams in bowl games. So what are we doing? Like, I don't know, maybe the Big Ten's pretty good. And yeah, I'm not saying Indiana had the craziest schedule, but they beat Michigan, who sat out their 4 best players and still beat Alabama when Alabama was trying to win the game. So it's like, I don't know, maybe Indiana was pretty good, right? And if God forbid, Notre Dame goes out there and trash cans Georgia today, all hell's going to break loose, right? But that's what this playoff is for. Get it to 12 teams so it's not just 2 SEC teams that get the red carpet rolled out for them in August, and you put up 2 other teams against 2 SEC teams, nobody else gets a shot. It's 5 against 8 and 6 against potentially 7 here, with 1 SEC team, maybe. Max 2, but 1 SEC team, which, by the way, wasn't even in the SEC last year. They're brand new to the conference. So, I don't know. 12 teams is good. Preseason rankings are bad. If you have an issue with Indiana making it, I don't know. Don't lose to OU. How about that?
Okay, which OU? Just to be clear, there's a lot of them.
The one that wasn't that good this year and still beat the shit out of Bama. How about that?
Fair enough.
Just don't lose.
Yeah.
Just don't lose. Anyway, all right, let's talk about the NFL.
We should.
That raise my blood pressure slightly less than college football discourse.
College football is excellent for raising your blood pressure. It is doctor tested and approved for that.
6 days out of the year, it's great. The other 259. Ugh. All right. NFL. Vikings at Detroit to decide the 1 seed. This is potentially the most impactful regular season game in modern NFL history. I think I saw a stat that it's the most combined wins ever on the field this late into the year.
Yep.
So this is a rare kind of regular season game. Honestly, it feels like not just a playoff game. It almost feels like a conference championship preview, unless Philly has something to say about it. I have so much I want to say about it, especially because these guys are division rivals and we've already seen them play early on this year. But I'll let you start me off, EJ.
How cool is it that we have a game this huge this late in the season? Look, NFL schedule makers get a lot of things wrong. They get a lot of things right too, but when they get something this right, they deserve kudos. They absolutely nailed this one. On the line in this game, number 1 seed in the playoffs, home field advantage, most total wins in the NFC, and the NFC North Division crown final week of the season. All those things, 1 game, absolute heavyweight fight. The Lions come rolling into this game. Jared Goff's passer rating in the last 5 games, and we're going to talk about, I know momentum is a dirty word, so we're not going to talk about momentum. We're just going to talk about a roll that teams are on, good ones, and later in the podcast, ones that are not so good. So we're going to talk about Jared Goff's passer rating in the last 5 games in order, which chronological is really important this time of year. 100, 109, 118, 137, 132. Talk about peaking at the right time. Absolutely vibing with Ben Johnson, which he's been doing for years now, but As you roll into the playoffs, we say this about the Chiefs on the other side. Come December, they're going to get their act together. I mean, tough to say that for a 15-1 team, but here we are.
Maybe one day this unstoppable juggernaut will really figure out how to be good.
Right. They've been so bad, and they still won 15 games. Anyways, back to the Lions and Jared Goff. 16 touchdowns and 1 pick in that stretch. That is a dominant month plus a week. Unreal focus and execution from him right now. If you're Detroit, you can't be more thrilled about that. You are playing strong. Your coach understands your roster. Your coaches, I should say, understand your roster in a way that is excellent and give them one of the best shots marching into this tournament. Outside of the 48 points that Josh Allen, who is the MVP frontrunner right now, and trust me, we can have a Lamar debate just like we had the college football debate. We'll do that at some point, and we probably should. But outside of him hanging 48 on Detroit, this team, with its cavalcade of defensive stars on IR, there are 12 of them missing off D right now, are allowing 25.5 points a game. Typically, that's a lot. Given the fact you've got 12 players gone on defense, and you're backed by a Ben Johnson offense that's averaging 34.6 points per game over that 5-game stretch, that's a winning formula. You're doing really well, and the defense deserves a ton of credit for bowing up over the last half of the season without their top pass rusher, with a bunch of their secondary pieces going down, and holding the line. That's a really good place for Detroit to march into this. On the Vikings side, Darnold has almost matched Goff. Almost, not quite. Over the last month, he too is vibing with his play caller, Kevin O'Connell, and Minnesota's been very tough to contain on offense over the last month. Again, are they hot now? Because we'll talk a lot about, 15-1. Well, that's the entire season. There's 3 or 4 mini seasons in an NFL season. Right now, over the last month, Minnesota is rolling on offense. But the problem is, they're not really matched up against the Lions defense as much as they are matched up against the Lions offense.
Yeah.
They're going to,
you just got to score.
They've got to score
7-7-7-7
every possession. And, field goals or touchdowns, preferably touchdowns, because if it's field goals, you're not going to win. But they have to do that and limit turnovers. And that's the pressure they go onto the field with. And again, Minnesota has been very good. I'll say that off the top. This is not a slap at Minnesota. It is, you've been very good, but you haven't been as good as your rivals right over there in the division. And that's who you're matched up against in this game with all that at stake. And there's a ton of pressure on that offense to come out and perform every single time and not make any errors. That is a very tough standard to uphold in the NFL.
Even though, the Lions coaching staff has done their best to mitigate all of the damage from all of Detroit's injuries, there's only so much you can do, right? And were it not for Kirby Joseph getting 2 turnovers against San Francisco to help turn that game around, like they might have lost against the Niners because they couldn't stop them. Like Brock Purdy had a literally perfect first half. They put up like 28 points by middle of the third quarter. They couldn't get a stop. And I remember saying at the time, before Kirby then immediately got his first pick, it's funny how the timing works out. I was like, hey, man, Detroit defense just out of guys. Like there's not much they can do about it. Aiden's gone. Aleem's gone. Anzalone's not back yet. Like they're just out of dudes. And it sucks because I think when they're at full strength, they at worst are a top 3 roster in the NFL. You could argue top 2. You could very easily argue top 1. But they're not healthy. Like that's just the reality. They're not healthy. They just feel like they're out of guys. And so, yes, they got those turnovers, which gifted them some extra possessions, and the offense, turned on, and all of a sudden, oh, look, we're at, 40 points again. How about that? But it kind of feels like every game for Detroit from here on out is going to have to be that of like, you're going to get 30 plus on us, but we're going to get 40. And at the end of the day, we'll take that win because it's a win. I'm a little worried about that approach against Minnesota. And not to say that Minnesota is going to shut down that offense, but now that you have Blake Cashman back, who was missing the first time around, keep in mind Minnesota's undefeated with Cashman on the field, which I know sounds insane because, like, right, you're talking about a random inside linebacker. Like, why are we doing this Cashman thing again? I'm telling you, folks, it's important. He is the engine that makes the offense go. If you are relying on Josh Metellus to be your hook dropper in this defense, Jared Goff and Ben Johnson are going to pick you apart. It's a whole different ballgame when you got Blake Cashman there. It just is. The numbers bear that out. The win-loss rate bears that out. Like, they faced the two worst matchups they possibly could in the middle of the season when they didn't have Cashman. It was Detroit and the Rams back-to-back, and they lost both times. I think they might have ran that table if Cashman was on the field, because it's not like they were, completely helpless in the game. They just needed a couple extra plays to be made, a couple extra stops to be made, and that's what Cashman can do. Now, I've gone over the whole schematics of how this Vikings defense works many times before, so I kind of want to focus on the Detroit side of this. The reason why Detroit gives them so much trouble is because honestly, they operate very similar to the Rams. It's a lot of condensed formations. It's a lot of balanced formations. It's more 2x2 than 3x1, which a lot of NFL offenses these days, we're running 3x1 most of the time, especially when the ball's spotted on the hash. We want three guys to the field. We want our one isolated guy backside. Fuck it, George Pickens down there somewhere, like that kind of style. The Lions are like, nope, we are running 2x2 balanced formations, everybody condensed, because we want to run the ball and we want to have as many bodies in the core as possible so that we can run as many different types of runs as we can. We can run power, we can run counter, we can run split zone, we can run crack toss, we can do all the end around stuff. Jet sweeps. When you have a condensed formation, the world is just open to you when it comes to the run game. Plus, when you're condensed, it encourages teams to run more cover 3 against you. And boy, the Lions are good against cover 3. Jared Goff and Ben Johnson dominate cover 3. They're top 5 in yards per attempt against cover 3. And they are 21st against quarters in cover 2. So when they spread out and they have to do like a normal drop back pass game and teams are calling quarters and cover 2 against them, they're okay. They're not that great. And I feel like if I'm Detroit, I want to do the same thing I did last time, which was have good first down runs, get me into 2nd and 2, get me into 2nd and 3, so that on those second down shot opportunities, we can still be under center. We can still do hard play action fakes. We can still work the middle of the field. Like, that was what killed Minnesota last time. It wasn't, a crazy third down conversion rate. It wasn't all these explosive plays over the top. It was they were in 2nd and 2 and 2nd and 3 all the time. And they didn't have the linebacker there that could handle the hook drop responsibilities for the coverages they like to play in those situations. So for Detroit, get good first down runs. For Minnesota, don't allow good first down runs. Get them into 2nd and 8. Get them into 3rd and 6. Make them spread out. Make them have to, sit there and pass protect as a bottom 5 offensive line in terms of pressure rate allowed this year, which was a shocking stat to me. But I looked it up. Both Minnesota and Detroit are bottom 5 offensive lines in terms of true drop back pass protection. No play action, no screen RPO. So when you make them sit there and pass protect, like Penei Sewell's one guy, there's still a bunch of others out there that have to protect. And Detroit's not very good at it. That's a big reason why their yards per attempt against those two coverages is not that great. So get good early down run stops, force them to have to spread out and throw the ball the old-fashioned way. And you might be able to force just enough punts to keep them to like 31 instead of 38. And then if you can trust Sam Darnold behind his equally ragged offensive line, and Justin Jefferson and Kevin O'Connell and Jordan Addison and Hawkinson and Aaron Jones, if you can trust them to get to 34 and they get 31, congratulations, you win the NFC. So that's the game plan. It's neither team's going to dominate the other, if I had to guess. They're both going to be white-knuckling it, holding on for dear life. But I do think there is a path from Minnesota to win this game. They just have to stop the early down runs. There is no other way to do it.
They have to execute. That's wait, are we talking about running the ball in the playoffs? Oh yeah, we are talking about running the ball and running success really in the playoffs. And this is Flores and the Vikings MO, and we've talked about it multiple times since the summer. You want to gamble on first and especially second down and create negative explosive plays for the defense so that you push offenses out of their comfort zone into that 3rd and long where success rates drop. Because if you give an offense as good as Detroit's, as balanced as Detroit's, as just Swiss watchmaking perfect as Detroit's, 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3, you're not winning anything. Like it's not, you're going to, at that point, you're hanging on to such a thin thread defensively, you might as well just cut it and say, well, nice try. So they wanted to do that in the first meeting. Like you said, they couldn't. It really does come down to that. I just think it's funny with all the offensive change, talking about formation, talking about college offenses bleeding into the NFL, talking about quick passing games, so planning the right. We still come back to the playoffs and we're like, well, guess what? Got to run the ball well on early downs. And everybody's like, what? Wait, running backs are back? Yes, they are. It's funny how it all runs in cycles, and this game is going to come down to that cycle.
Every single year we fall for September football.
Right? And October football, and even October November football.
Like early, like before, like the first drops of rain hit the ground, right? When like you could just
for you
shotgun night. Well,
yeah,
it's not February yet. We haven't hit our rainy season, which is exactly 1 week long.
Yeah.
But every single year, the shotgun rates are super high early on, right? The run pass rates are super low early on, and then as the season goes on, guys get banged up. All of a sudden, you started the year with 4 great receivers. Now you got 2. Looking at you, Houston. Actually, Houston's got 1 at this point, right? So it's like, all right, we're going back to the I formation, boys. Like we're running the ball 30 times because we literally have to. So every single year it happens. We always fall for it in September. Miami puts up 70 and we're like, oh my God, this is going to be the greatest offense of all time. And then everything else happens, right? One quick note, and then we'll get right back to the show. You guys are very familiar with Manscaped at this point because they've supported us forever. But they did just release a brand new addition to their grooming line that you might be interested in called the Chairman Pro, which is an old school electric foil shaver that can give you a professional shave right at home. You can use either the skin-safe 4-blade foil for a smooth finish, or if you want a stubble look, they have multiple options for the stubble trimmer to give you either a 1 to 2 day look or a 3 to 4 day look, depending on your preference. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower if you want, and it makes it easier to clean too because you can just rinse it under the sink. It also, of course, has an LED spotlight so you can see every hair you're trying to shave, and it has up to 75 minutes of runtime. So if you're in need of a new shaver to maintain your stubble or to have a fresh and smooth face every single day, check out the Chairman Pro at Manscaped. And of course, check out everything else they have to offer too, whether it's body trimmers, lotion, shave gels, nose hair trimmers. I mean, you name it, they have it when it comes to grooming. You can see it all at manscaped.com. And if you use promo code BOOTLEG, you'll also get a 20% off discount and free shipping on your order. Again, that is manscaped.com, promo code BOOTLEG. That will give you 20% off and free shipping on whatever you get. Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring today's show. And with that, let's get back to it. By the way, speaking of things that lie to us early on, that we never learn our lesson, the Cincinnati Bengals. It's another season, another slow start, another late push for the playoffs. We tell this story every single year. Hell, we tell it about the Rams every single year too. We're about to get into them as well. But the Bengals... The Bengals have turned terrible Septembers and great Decembers into an art form, right? Like I almost don't care what Cincy does in the early season anymore because it almost doesn't matter. Like I know they're going to get their shit together, at least offensively, defensively. But the one thing is it took them a little too long to do it this year. I think they played with a little too much fire. And if they just got one more early win, right? Or hell, if they just beat the Patriots week 1, like they'd be sitting pretty. They'd be making the playoffs. So maybe they kind of fucked around a little bit too much this year before they found out. But this is still kind of the same arc of Cincinnati that we're used to, which is they play dead for the first half of the season, and then all of a sudden they click. And Joe Burrow is clicking at a level that were it not for him being on Cincinnati that doesn't have a defense and can't stop anybody and has cost themselves multiple wins, several wins at this point by just not being able to get a stop at all. Were it not for him playing on this particularly awful defensive team, he'd probably be in the mix for MVP. Because if you're looking at his numbers, if you're looking at his impact, if you're looking at just the fact that I don't think the Bengals would have won a game this year without Joe Burrow, like this is simply one of the most remarkable quarterbacking seasons that I have seen that is going to get no awards at all. Like somebody this good, somebody this productive should at least have something to show for it. But because the rest of his team is so garbage, at least defensively, offensively, they're great. He's going to go home with nothing, and that sucks.
Oh, come on. Bruises aren't nothing.
A lot of bruises, EJ.
A lot of
bruises.
Burrow is such an interesting and polarizing QB, and this is very much a case for both things are true, and I will lay out the case for both things being true. Burrow is playing amazing football, period, full stop. He is playing great football. And if MVP really truly meant most valuable player, i.e. the theory that we use to figure out who that is if we remove that player, what's the team left with? Burrow would be right near the top of the voting. He still might not win it, but with this performance, you cannot deny what he's done. But he is also a product of the system and the team they've built. Again, both things are true. It's not that that system makes Joe Burrow good. Joe Burrow is amazing within that system, but the system also supports all the numbers he puts up. What I mean is the defense, as you've said, especially in the early going, was terrible. They have a great receiver core. They have very average offensive line play. They're going to be playing from behind. They have the apparatus to throw and throw a lot. And Burrow's going to have to. That is the only path. They have organized this needle to point in that direction. And it points that way, and Burrow delivers, right? They've set Joe Burrow up on this pedestal to say, all right, you're going to need to play this way. You're basically going to need to play hero ball for us to have a chance. And Burrow goes out and plays amazing hero ball. Both things are true. Joe Burrow, great player, great season. Bengals, a structure set up to support that, which leads to these incredible statistical totals.
I wouldn't say structure to support it. I would say structure to force it.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's like they
There's
make
no other
him
way.
do this. Yeah.
This is the only path, and you must follow it. And he follows it very well and to the letter. And even above that, again, exceptional play, very strange structure from a team building standpoint. And if he didn't play that way, we wouldn't be talking about them at all. We are talking about them. AFC North is always kind of an even playing field. These teams don't like each other. They always play each other hard. They love to drag their division rivals down, even when there's not a lot to play for. If there's playoffs on the line, even better. Look, the Bengals' chances are pretty slight. They're 6% right now. They go up 4% if they win. They need a lot of help, but it's a chance, and it's against a division rival. They're going to play really hard. So the Steelers have less to fight for. They're already in. But Russell Wilson, passer rating games over the last month. Wrong direction, folks. 101, 94, 92, 65. So
George Pickens is kind of important, huh?
Yeah, and we said that we were surprised by the Steelers' rise when Russ took over because we said, yeah, we think it'll be better, but we didn't imagine it would be that much better. But we also pointed out to all of you at that point. So this is receipts. This connection is the one. They need this. This is what changed everything, is that George Pickens is down there somewhere. He's exceptional at that one thing. Russell's doing it, and that brought the element to their offense with all the rest of the support that elevated the Steelers in the middle of the season. We said that's a really tenuous thing because the quarterback can get hurt, the wide receiver can get hurt, the offensive line play can break down, and then you don't have it, and then you're right back to where you were, which is not at a very good place. The Steelers are kind of right back to where they were, and it's not a very good place. On defense, the Steelers' defense is relatively healthy compared to a lot of teams we're talking about at this stage of the season, but it's a very odd defense. They give up a ton of passing yards, 10th most in the league per game, which is Burrow's strength. So again, Burrow's probably going to light them up through the air. Despite that, the Steelers' defense really tightens up when it matters. They're the 7th best scoring defense in the league. So it's sort of a tale of two cities. They'll give you a lot of passing yards, but when it comes down to it and you want points, they're probably going to make that field goals, not touchdowns. And sometimes in the red zone, they're just going to lock you down despite the sort of clear freeway between the 20s that they give a lot of teams through the air. So, the Bengals can come in here raring, and if they can finish in the red zone, they've got a chance to finish off the Olympic Steelers. They would love that. Again, 4% playoff chance. Don't tell the Bengals that. They don't care. It's we can beat Pittsburgh in the last game of the year and give ourselves a leg up. Let's go.
What I found interesting about the first matchup, right, because that was the best Steelers offensive performance of the year and one of the best games I've seen Russ play in a really long time. Now, again, it was against the Bengals. I get it. They're not that great. Defensively. I keep having to emphasize that. Defensive.
Tale of two teams within the same team.
Very much so. If you're looking at where Russ attacked on the field in that game, I truly believe the reason why they were so effective was because Russ worked the intermediate middle of the field. He doesn't do that often, but in that game specifically, he did. And Arthur Smith was locked in terms of play calling in that game. Like, they had answers for everything. When the Bengals would do, the early down quarters looks, he's like, we're going to get the screen game going. They popped a couple explosive screens, especially in the red zone. One of them was a touchdown. They attacked cover 3 with crossing routes. I don't think the Bengals even expected Russ to throw a crossing route on them, and he did like 4 times. And you're like, what the hell? He can do that? Who taught him that? Against man coverage, there was a lot of rub routes. They took a shot to Pickens down the sideline. Like, they just had answers for everything. And the Bengals were hopeless. I mean, they've been hopeless a lot this year, but especially in that game, they were completely hopeless. Couldn't get any pressure, which is another side note. One of the reasons why the Bengals defense is so bad is because outside of Hendrickson, they cannot get pressure. Like, they need another pass rusher like I need oxygen. And it's unfortunate. Like, they've tried investing in the position outside of Hendrickson, and it just hasn't worked out. But they desperately need one. So if they don't make the playoffs this year and they end up picking in the teens, almost knocked over my coffee. If they end up picking in the teens, I almost feel like they're a prime trade up candidate for, say, an Abdul Carter, a Mason Grant, like somebody, something. Like, just get a defensive lineman, because my God, they are bad. Flip it over to the other side, Steelers defense. They also gave up a lot of points in that one because Joe Burrow was on a heater, and Jamar and T and Yoshevich and all that, right? What I found interesting about their game plan, because they're a very man-heavy defense. Since week 10, they played the most man coverage out of anybody. It's like 40% man rate. I almost feel like they didn't do enough man against Cincy. And they still called it 20 times in that game. That still wasn't enough. If you're looking at all their man coverage snaps, they gave up 3 receptions for 23 yards. Against Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Yoshevich, and an MVP caliber quarterback throwing the ball. 3 catches, 23 yards on 20 man coverage snaps. But if you're looking at all the times they called cover 2, 7 for $135. All the times they called cover 3, 11 for $112. Like, they are awful in zone coverage. So yes, the Steelers have given up a lot of yardage. It's because they can't play zone coverage. Like, they're kind of only good in man, and that's weird. So if I'm them, just keep calling man coverage until they make you not, right? And just trust your guys to win. They won the first time. You went away from it. Burrow sliced and diced you because you gave a whole bunch of space, and these guys just don't know how to play zone. Just play man. And if you go down with the ship, fine. Like, whatever. We lost to Jamar Chase. It happens. But you should at least try doing what you're good at, in my opinion.
And if weather comes into it, it's going to be fun, because man coverage, when it's super sloppy, can be tough. It's a lot easier to say, drop back and cover a space, as opposed to stay with that really fast guy across the field. Yes, the footing's the same for everybody, but defensive players are reacting. Offensive players setting the pace. So I'm with you. Make it a physical fight. They're good at that. Sit up, play some press. Are you going to lose some to those guys? Yeah, but probably less than the other way. And that's probably the most important thing for the Steelers. It's going to be a fascinating game to see how this one plays out, because, again, you can kind of throw the records out. A lot of times we go, oh, this is the way it should go. And then we go, oh, AFC North, sorry. They're just beating the hell out of each other.
I'm going to pick the Bengals to win this one. Where are you going?
I think the Bengals have more to play for, and I think this sounds dumb, but I think they want to win it more at this point. Again, Steelers are in the playoffs either way. Uh,
I always love that. Who wants it?
right.
More?
Like nobody
I don't
wants
know.
to win in
They
week 18
they
of the
both
NFL.
want to.
Yeah, I mean, they're out there anyways. Everybody's beat up at this time of year. And I mean, players, coaches, like coaches are super tired. This is a huge grind. Players are absolutely all playing hurt, injured, you name it. And everybody wants to win. That's why when somebody's like, oh, they should just tank, I'm like, organizations can try to do that, but players will not do that. Like, go out there and just don't get beat up as much.
No. That's what I was trying to tell Giants fans, because Giants fans were beside themselves as Drew Lock
100%.
One of the most statistically ridiculous quarterback performances like in the last 20 years. Like, okay, great, that came out of nowhere. And Giants fans are like, oh my God, why are they winning? Why are they trying to win? And I'm like, I mean, Joe Shane might, in the back of his head being like, I'm totally okay with taking a loss here. Dable is not.
Nope.
The players are not. They're playing for contracts. They're playing for money. Dable's playing, coaching for his job. Like, they're not going to try to lose. And honestly, if Shane, he'll never admit it, if Shane is advocating for a tank, it's because he already knows the roster that he built isn't good enough anyway, so he wants another crack at it. So, again, front offices, they don't really try to tank, but they will acknowledge that it's easier for them to do their job if they lose. Players and coaches will never actively try to lose. I've rarely ever seen that happen. The last time I saw it happen was Doug Peterson, like, intentionally throwing a game in Philly to screw over a division rival, but that wasn't really like the same circumstances, right? That was just Doug trying to screw Washington, and it worked, by the way.
And it worked.
All right. Last team I want to dig into here, and it's Seahawks, Rams. Seahawks are out of it, so I'm talking less about them. I more so want to bring up the Rams, because this team, similarly to the Bengals, started out in a 3-game under 500 hole early on for the second straight year and made the playoffs for the second straight year. They are the kings of making things harder on themselves than they need to be. Now, they were my NFC Super Bowl pick preseason, and it didn't look great for a while there, but hey, never wrong, just early. They're back. Went on a 92 run. And they're a great team. Like, if you're looking at them since week 10, once their offensive line got healthy, right? Because Avila came back, Jonah came back, Havenstein missed some time. I think he came back like week 14. This is a team that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, has an offensive line that, in terms of true drop back passes, no screens, no RPOs, no play action, they're top 10 in pass protection efficiency, since they got their guys healthy. And their young defensive line, which has really been carrying the load the entire year for that defense, they're top 10 in pressure rate, despite how young they are. So you got Jared Verse, you got Kobe Turner, you got Young, you got all these kids that are just ripping teams to pieces. And on the back end, they're not that good. But if you can pass protect and you can rush the passer, and you have Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Sean McVay, really good running backs, and a healthy offensive line, you got a shot here. Like, you really have a shot. This team already beat Minnesota. Like, they're a true threat to Detroit, I think, when they're healthy, especially because Detroit's not healthy. The one terrible matchup for them is Philly, so they got to hope that seeding-wise they can avoid Philly. But if they can find their way into, doing a gauntlet of, let's see, who would be, if they can do a gauntlet of like Washington and then maybe, insert NFC North team here and then just hope that somebody else takes care of Philly before they get to the championship game, like they could honestly go on a run here. Like, they are peaking at the absolute right time. I know the recent scores don't reflect it, but talent-wise, coaching-wise, quarterback-wise, like, I really do think the Rams are a threat. They just have to get really lucky in terms of how the seeds go.
Yeah, I think peaking is a bit much, but they're playing really good football. And for me, a lot of this comes down to McVay, because nobody believed in the Rams at that point when their offensive line wasn't healthy. Earlier in the season, they lost some really bad games, and everybody kind of went, okay, it's not going to be their year. McVay, like most coaches, Never done. He is not done fighting. He's not done believing that this team is really, really good. And the weird thing about NFL playoff seeding, we started with a rant about college football, but the Rams are, checks notes, the 3 seed in the NFC. Like, what? You would certainly not say the Rams are the 3rd best team in the NFC, but NFL playoff seeding is weird. Here we are. The Rams clinched a division, but Seattle hates their division rivals. If Hawks fans hate anybody in the NFC West, it's the Rams. They don't like the Niners a lot, but they hate the Rams because the Rams have had their number for a long time now, and that coincides largely with McVay being in Los Angeles, but not only. There's history that goes behind this. Makes for a great storyline if Seattle's going to knock the Rams off, but it's going to be tough to do. The Rams have won 5 straight to seal the division. Again, McVay got them on a roll after they got healthy, and they marched to do that. They've had to limp and scrap, and that makes a tougher playoff team, in my opinion, is all these wins have not been easy, but they've managed to get them. So it's interesting. Although they were all wins, Stafford and the offense fell off a cliff in the last 3 games. 12, 19, and 13 points was some of the worst production of the year. And weirdly, I talked about there being little seasons within a team's season. It strangely mirrors another straight 3-game trough they had earlier in the season. Games versus Chicago, Green Bay, and Vegas. Chicago, 18 points in a loss. Green Bay, 19 points in a loss. And Vegas, 20 points in a win. So it's almost the exact same stretch in order that happened earlier in the year. Again, different team. The roster was very different. Defensive line still playing great. Seeing Jared Verse get some second-team All-Pro nods, that's, well-deserved, and I think indicative of how good they've been, but Fisk has been great. I don't want to say under the radar because he's gotten some attention, but again, with the sort of up and down season that Los Angeles has had, maybe not enough. Kobe's been great for a couple of years now, and it's a really fun team to watch. And yes, if they get lined up the right way, they can knock people out because they believe in Stafford can still light it up. Right now, speaking of banged up, Matthew Stafford is perpetually banged up. And
when's the last time he was healthy?
Maybe
the Obama administration,
middle of Georgia. I don't know. It's a long time ago. So it's a fascinating team, and overall, the matchup to me is really interesting. It reminds me of like 2 older boxers in the late rounds of a fight, and neither one of them are going to the championship. Neither one of them are getting a title shot, but they're like, we don't care. They're savvy. They're cagey. They've faced off a ton of times. They don't like each other. There's pride on the line. Neither one of them are going to go down easy. So they're just, late at night at the athletic club, beating the hell out of each other. They don't care if there's any fans in the stands, cheap seats, stale beer, the whole bit. Even if everybody doesn't see it, this game is going to go down swinging, and it's going to be a ton of fun to watch.
I also want to note, if the Seahawks win, which they very well could, because it's not like Seattle's like not talented.
Correct.
They have the worst offensive line in the NFL, but there's a whole bunch of other pieces there that we really like. If the Seahawks win this game, and I got this note from Field Goals, this will be the first 10-win team ever to miss the 14-team playoff format, which started 5 years ago. So we've gone 5 straight years of every single 10-plus win team making the playoffs. The NFC is so good this year that Seattle will be the first to miss it. So, everybody went into the season thinking that the AFC was murderer's row, and the NFC was like, oh, there's like a couple good teams. They're going to beat up on everybody else. Like, no, the NFC this year is the power conference. Like, if you get out of the NFC and make it to the Super Bowl, I'm not saying it'll be like easy to beat whoever makes it out of the AFC, because in all likelihood it's going to be Kansas City, and good job going against that black magic. But I will say you're probably going to be one of the more battle-tested NFC champions in recent memory, because the conference is extraordinarily good this year, to the point where like Green Bay might be a 12-win 7 seed. Like, that's absurd.
Yeah,
it's absolutely absurd. I never thought I would see anything like that, but welcome to the NFC North, folks.
Oh, I've been there. I hate it here.
You hate it here. Green Bay is going to end up with 5 losses, and 4 of them are to their own division. Like, that is incredible, unless the Bears somehow decide to mess around and give them a 6th loss this year, which would be so Chicago, by the way.
Yeah.
To ruin their draft position that way.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I think Bears fans, because it would be against Green Bay, I think they would still take it.
They would still take it, wise or not. And as we said, players are going to be out there fighting. Not all these players are going to be on these teams next year, and this is their resume, especially late in the season. If you are somebody that's coming in as a reserve or somebody that was injured, or, again, a veteran in the last year of your contract, and you're going to be out there plying the free agency waters against the potential of a young draft pick that costs less, you need these games. You need to be out putting up tape saying, hey, I beat that guy. I don't care if he's a reserve offensive lineman. I still got that sack. Like, you need to be putting these things on tape. So it is possible. Do I think Chicago, even if they played all their starters and Green Bay rested all theirs, would win the game? It would be closer to a fair fight at that point, but I still don't think I would put money on the Bears, because the Bears are in their own way a lot right now.
It's the Bears. I'm not betting on the Bears.
Exactly.
Like, even
Change
if you said it
coming.
was a free bet.
Yeah, right. I'll give you $10 to bet on the Bears. No, save your money. It's okay.
It's like, can I just have a sandwich?
Right.
Like, can we go down to Portillo's instead? Like, it's probably better use of the money.
Yeah.
Speaking of changes coming, halfway through the year, I was like, I don't know if Ben Johnson's really going to want to deal with this. It kind of sounds like Ben Johnson might be okay with dealing with this. So, Detroit fans listening to this show, I know we have dozens of you. Enjoy him while you can, because I think he next time he shows up in Detroit, he might be wearing a Bears jersey or polo.
Polo,
visor,
windbreaker, hoodie. Yeah, no,
hoodie. I don't know.
It is possible. There's a lot of talk about it. Certainly, Bears fans want it. It's going to be one of the great storylines that's going to happen very early on. Again, there's an early window now for coach recruiting for teams that are still in the playoffs. That's always interesting to me, because you get your first sit down with a guy, but you can't necessarily pull the trigger. It's not like college where, hey, we hired this guy and he's leaving. He's not going to be there for the bowl game. Like, Ben Johnson's going to finish out the season. It's very, very important to him. And that's not a tradition in the NFL anyways, in terms of leaving. But the whole reason he went back to Detroit this year, when a lot of people, he had head coach interviews last year, he didn't feel super comfortable with them, and he felt committed to sort of finishing what they'd started in Detroit. And this season is very much that. But it puts the Bears in a weird position. If they think they're the front runners, great. But if they don't get him and they wait that long,
then you get nobody.
Yeah, you're down the list. You're the 5th candidate or the 6th or maybe even the 7th. So we'll see how that goes. But it is an odd position for everybody thinking it's just a done deal. I will encourage you to hold your horses a bit. These things are never done deals until they are. Like, until that guy's at the podium in a Bears hoodie, don't take it for granted.
I will say this, you and I have covered this league for long enough, and we've gone to enough industry events to know. And I'm not reporting that the Bears have already called Ben Johnson's agent. I'm just saying there's like a 90% chance the Bears already know if he's interested, right? They're not going to go into this blind. So just pay attention to who the Bears are interviewing in the meantime while the Lions are on their playoff run. Because if they're interviewing a bunch of candidates where it's like, there's no shot, this is real, right? That's a fake candidate. It's a fake interview. They're doing a favor for blah, blah, blah. If it's a whole bunch of interviews that are not serious, I think that means they think they get Ben Johnson, right?
I'm going to go back to it's the Bears.
I know you're, again, wounded Bears fan.
100%. I'd be like, they probably interview a bunch of people that people say, no, there's no shot. And then they hire one of those guys, because that's what they do.
I would pay attention if they're interviewing Cliff, right? If they're interviewing Cliff, I would pay attention to that, because I could see that. If they're interviewing Vrabel, like, that sounds like a real one. If they're bringing in Rex Ryan, I think they think they're getting Ben, right? Like, it's got to be a serious interview.
Yeah.
Or like Ron Rivera, like, it's doing a favor to an old Bear. Like, I get it, but it's not serious. These are not serious people, EJ.
They are not serious people. We have established that long ago and far away, but it'll be a fascinating thing. And it is around the entire league. It is a time for change. This is the new year. Quick shout out to everybody that's followed us this year. We really deeply appreciate all that support. And it is, time for change in the NFL. That is good change for some folks. That is bad change for other folks. Folks losing their jobs, families having to move, all that. That is a very real cost, but that is how this league works. You win, you stay, you lose, you go. That's just the way it goes.
All right. Well, I said it was going to be a shorter episode, and it still ended up not being a shorter episode in typical bootleg fashion. So I apologize, or you're welcome. I want to thank all of our executive producers over on the Bootleg Football, if I could speak, Patreon. Fitzy, Connor, Eichen, Liam, and Mike. Once again, appreciate all you guys. Appreciate Underdog for making the show possible. Appreciate Homage, Manscaped, all of our sponsors. Couldn't do this without you guys. And with that, we're going to get out of here. We're going to see how things shake out. We're going to see how the playoffs are seeded. We'll be back next week to talk about all that, as well as probably some draft talk, because most fan bases are out of it at this point, and they want to hear something slightly hopeful and or encouraging. So we'll do some draft talk. We'll do some college talk. We'll do playoff talk. All that coming next week. So with that, see you soon.